Everyone is talking about the Super Bowl this weekend, sure, whatever, but Marry Me is the equivalent of a Super Bowl event for the Miscellaneous channel. So all I care about this weekend is this new movie. Hello and welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. I typically cover TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. So today I wanted to talk to you about Marry Me, the new rom-com starring J-Lo that you may or may not have heard of given the extensive promotion for this movie. So I wanted to give you a holistic review of Marry Me. I'll start off spoiler free, but I will put chapters down below and timestamps if you wanted to skip directly to my unfiltered and spoilery thoughts. If you're simply wondering, is Marry Me worth watching? I always like to start with this section for Marry Me. It did come out theatrically and on streaming. It is streaming on the service Peacock. I am going to say that this movie is not worth theater prices. I think for the quality that you're getting out of the movie, it's more worth the $5 for the streaming service than it is the $20+ per person that it is in theaters. If you like rom-coms, it's probably just gonna be a staple one to check out. However, it does lack a few things like some charm and some clear sort of moral of the story or message. It asks you to suspend your disbelief like a lot, maybe past some people's boundaries. So if you're really into rom-coms like I am, or you like to pick apart movies, if you're a fan of any of these actors that are big A-list names now, I'd recommend checking it out. But also, I don't think you're missing out on a ton if you don't check it out. Overall, my thoughts on the movie are that it was pretty mediocre. I did have kind of high expectations. I'd been awaiting it for months. I had been sort of building up hype. You might read this as kind of a spoiler, but I don't know if it is. This is just one of those movies where if you watch the trailer, you know the entire movie. What you see is what you get. However, there are some fun things to this movie. Like, I think the music is a highlight. I think sort of the budget and like the costuming and the glamour of it all was fun to watch. I don't know how much rom-com it is. It's like, give me romance, but hold the comedy. It's a Valentine's Day weekend release, so it's definitely meant to be sort of a date night or a girls' night out kind of movie. It just gives you that. I just felt like it was a little bland. It stayed pretty surface level. Like, it didn't win me over in a way where I fell in love with the movie. It does feel like our society is currently so starved of rom-coms. If you were stranded in the desert and you found a bowl of water and it's hot water and there's sand in it, but you've been stranded and you're thirsty. Marry Me is that water. So let me talk a little bit about Marry Me. Wikipedia says the budget for this movie was $23 million. And honestly, I expected more based on just like who was involved, the salaries that were probably involved, and the promotion. This movie had the most ridiculous promotion. They created an entire Drag Race episode around promoting this movie. It took over the entire runway of RuPaul's Drag Race season 14 for one episode. This is also kind of a musical leaning movie, so there is an original soundtrack with some original songs, particularly from J-Lo and Maluma and them together. I think that's kind of a cool component of the movie. This movie was actually supposed to release last year in February of 2021, but it got delayed due to COVID issues, and it's been in the works for a long time, ever since 2019. And it's kind of cool. This is a female directed movie. The director is Kat Coiro, who directed apparently Girls 5 Eva and Florida Girls and She-Hulk. It sounds like the director was someone involved in TV mostly. The film stars Jennifer Lopez, as I have said, and her romantic interest is Owen Wilson, as well as Maluma in his very first movie. Maluma is a Colombian singer who is very popular and very hot. Also in supporting roles are Sarah Silverman, Michelle Buteau, and the little girl from Big Little Lies. Oh, and also John Bradley, who's apparently known mostly from Game of Thrones. And according to Wikipedia, the movie concept is based on a graphic novel. I think I saw a tweet somewhere that was like, Marry Me is based on a graphic novel, so it's technically a comic book movie. But yeah, kind of interesting that that's the source material. I wonder how much it strayed from it. I didn't look too far into it. So let's just go ahead and talk about the movie. Usually this is the part where I summarize the movie or the TV show, but I'm just gonna watch the trailer with y'all and that'll be my summary because I think that includes everything I need to cover. This is your spoiler alert from here on out. If you haven't watched the movie and want to, go ahead and come back to this video and we can discuss. I don't usually do this, but I'm gonna watch the trailer with y'all. I used parts of the trailer of this movie in a previous video and it got copyright stricken. So I'm gonna show it to y'all organically here on my phone. Hopefully that gets us around a little bit of a copyright ID, we'll see. I put in trailers in almost all of my videos and they very rarely get copyright flagged because it's a trailer and they, in theory, want people promoting the movie or talking about the trailer. But this one did, and that goes to show that this movie is the trailer. The trailer is the movie. Excuse my dirty phone. But here we go. Now I'm getting notifications. God damn it. So Kat Valdez and Bastien, played by JLo and Maluma, are going to get married in a concert in front of everybody. Sarah Silverman has extra tickets to the concert and wants to take Owen Wilson's character, Charlie, and his daughter. He doesn't know pop culture, doesn't know who Kat is. All of Kat's team finds out that Bastien was caught cheating with her assistant, and now she's going up on stage alone. She spots Charlie in the crowd with a "Marry Me" sign and says yes, as if it was a literal question at her. Everyone's Instagram living this, and he goes on stage and marries her. He says okay and kisses her. They leave. He says that's crazy. She gets roasted on Jimmy Fallon. Everyone says it's crazy. Kat says she should stay married to him. She doesn't want to look crazy in front of everybody. They're a little awkward together at first. They literally don't know each other. They're strangers. Kat says they need to embrace the spontaneity of the moment. Charlie goes along with it. He's just doing what he's told. They start bonding. People on social media and Kat's team don't really like Charlie because he's so regular. She wants to be normal. He invites her to the school semi-formal. She calls him when she's lonely. They start talking more on the phone while she's away. They don't live together. They're just together for publicity a lot of the time. Charlie eventually realizes he doesn't fit into her glamorous world, and she is shocked, but he breaks up with her. Her career has taken off, though, and she got nominated for a Grammy with Bastien for the "Marry Me" song. Just Say Yes, Valentine's Day. That was the trailer, and it pretty much encompassed everything aside from like the final 15 minutes. So like I said, Charlie, Owen Wilson's character, breaks up with Kat because she is doing a lot of promo for the new Grammy nominated song "Marry Me." The Grammy nomination sort of gets her and Bastien together again to like promote the single and perform it. And Charlie starts getting kind of not jealous, but like feeling like he doesn't belong in her world and that she fits a lot better with Bastien. But ultimately, Kat is doing a Jimmy Fallon spot with Bastien and decides to have an epiphany there. She says, "Sorry, Jimmy, I know this is a bad time to have an epiphany," but, and then she monologues about the song she was writing throughout the whole movie was "On My Way," which is the song you hear in the background in the trailer. And she's writing it throughout the movie, can't figure out the words, and then towards the end figures out the words, and then Jimmy Fallon's like, "Why did you write that song for Bastien?" I keep wanting to call her J-Lo's character. Kat says, "I actually didn't write this for Bastien, I wrote it for Charlie," and then she runs away from Jimmy Fallon and goes to the mathalon. Sarah Silverman's character's name is Parker, and she's Charlie's best friend. They're the chaperones of the math club at their school. They are teachers. Charlie's daughter is having some stage fright issues, but she's good at math, and she's competing in this big mathalon. Kat also got involved in helping out the kids. Kat runs away from Jimmy Fallon, gets on a flight, has like the classic airport chase scene, flies coach to whatever little town the mathalon is in. It's a big deal that she flies coach because she's a mega superstar. Earlier in the movie, Kat's character had taught the kids to dance if they were nervous about answering a math question because that gets their mind off of like the nerves. At the very end, Lou is giving the defining answer for the competition to win for her team, and she gets really nervous, so she starts dancing, looking at her dad, Charlie. The dancing works, and she ultimately says the right answer, but it's just off by a second and it doesn't count towards the competition. Right when the timer's about to go off, that's when Kat's character runs into the auditorium. She doesn't do anything to help the math situation. Basically, the team loses, which is sad, and the little girl's sad, but Charlie is still a proud dad that she got over the nerves and answered the question right. As Charlie is hugging his daughter on the stage of the mathalon, Kat comes in and holds up a sign saying "Marry me" to bring it full circle to the beginning, and that's the end of the movie. And they live happily ever after. Well, now let me talk about my critiques, which is the things I did not like about this movie. I'm not watching this movie judging it as if it's like some Oscar-worthy film and like nitpicking at things like that. I know it's a rom-com. I know what I'm getting into. This movie might be comforting to some, but there were just a lot of issues that made me not love it in the end. It was mid, as the kids say. Let me, I guess, start with the technical issues, because this is an issue I did not expect for a movie of this caliber. And you probably noticed this technical issue as well. It had to do with the lens that they were using on the camera. You can really tell in the classroom scenes the most, or whenever they're in an indoor space and they pan the camera from a side to side. You see this warping of the room they're in. They're kind of using a fisheye type lens for these scenes, and they used this lens a lot throughout the movie. It was simply jarring to see these shots. Like, most of the time I'm not super aware of lenses and production type stuff, but this was just so noticeable. Those classroom scenes especially, the kids on the edges of the frame were like warped and looked like C shapes, like their body a little bit. At least half of the movie you can detect this lens happening. Any wide shot, you can tell this lens is there pretty much. I don't know if it was a choice, if it was an accident. Rom-coms are generally not experimental with their production, especially of this caliber, are very clean, good color, saturation, very standard type of shots and filming. You expect this kind of thing on like maybe something more experimental, more indie, or more fantasy or something where you're trying to make some distortion happen for a reason. I also had some issues with the sound streaming it on Peacock, and this might totally be my own speakers. A lot of the sound sounded metallic, so like S's sounded like metallic or tinny. Even though I watched Drag Race last night and I was trying to listen for the metallic sound and it wasn't there. So maybe it's a Peacock issue, maybe it's the file they uploaded, or maybe it's my speakers. Let me know. Technical issues out of the way. Let's talk about the story. I'm just confused what it's trying to tell audiences. So I think the overall theme or the mantra of this movie was take a leap of faith, especially in love, in parentheses. It just feels like a weird thing to push on audiences because it's really throwing logic out the window completely. If nothing else works, just do something insane. I mean, I guess embrace spontaneity is the message, but like what they're showing you as the example of embrace spontaneity is literally marrying a stranger on the spot. I was very excited for this movie because my favorite kind of TV and media to watch is criticisms of fame, just depictions of it in like a raw and more authentic way. So all of my favorite shows usually involve fame and the characters that are dealing with it, and that's part of why I was excited for Marry Me. But it just didn't go deep at all on the fame theme of JLo's character, Kat. My big hope for this movie that I actually mentioned in another video, I was hoping for a conversation on ageism between Kat and Charlie's characters, and how Kat feels a very strong pressure to keep looking young, to not age, to behave a certain way. And there were just a few conversations in the movie where Kat says that she doesn't have credibility with audiences, and she's never been nominated for an award, and those are her biggest like issues about her own career. Owen Wilson's character Charlie really hates social media. They just keep it very surface for why he does and don't actually give any critiques about social media. In fact, it's the opposite, and they are sort of promoting social media because this movie and Hollywood in general benefit from social media a lot. Charlie had no concrete reasons for why he hated social media, and there's a certain point in the movie where Charlie challenges Kat to not have her team around her for a day, not worry about social media, not worry about making content. She is like, okay, I can do that, but in exchange, you need to get on social media and you need to have Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram. They only ever showed that he has an Instagram. He just kind of accepts having a smartphone and having Instagram. After he gets the 500,000 followers, someone asks him, like, how do you feel about all this? Like, do you hate it? And he's like, I'm happy with it. And I'm like, where's this character's journey? And I think Charlie's character really bothered me as well because he felt so, like, empty as a character. Like, he had no clear motivations to say yes to Kat's character literally marrying him, almost in a hostage situation manner on a stage in front of millions of people. There was never this clear motivation why he said yes, why he went along with it. I think any normal person would be like, what the hell? I don't know this lady. And also he's like perfect. All he does is school and being a dad. And he's single. Like, what if that guy had just been a married guy and you were just trying to marry him on stage? Like, so many questions of like, why did this man say yes? You can tell the movie is not aware about the internet that much because it only portrays Instagram Live as social media. Like, that's it. That's all that exists. Maybe Facebook and Meta paid for that advertisement. The exclusive social media of this marry me world. This is such a little nitpicky thing, but this is where you see the people that make this movie don't care about portraying social media accurately. Kat's assistant Melissa, played by Michelle Buteau. Every time we see an Instagram live of Kat doing something, J-Lo's character, like teaching the kids how to dance, and it's like promo for her, it's always from an Instagram live of her assistant's account. And it's like the assistant would be using Kat's account to record, to go live. Like celebrities' assistants don't have millions of followers like the celebrity themselves. It's just a silly oversight that they had that. Like, it could have easily just been J-Lo's name at the top. So yeah, no real critique on Fame. Little talks about being a woman in the industry. There's a couple of parts where there's a camera guy following Kat and Charlie is like, can we send the cameraman away? This was an opportunity in the writing to just have Kat's character act a little bit different when the camera's gone to when the camera's there. Trust me, I am not trying to say this movie needs to be like The Comeback or the other two or these other, like, these comedies that are a satire of Hollywood. It doesn't need to be that deep, but just showing Kat when the camera's gone, like, tired of being on all the time. She just went from performing for a vlog camera to finally being alone with Charlie for the first time. And it would have been nice to just see her drop a little bit in like energy or performance to feel, or just a relief that the camera's gone. But there was just like no change in Kat's demeanor. Just small things like that would have helped with a little bit of realism, just ground the character a little bit. It just felt like this is propaganda for what they want us to think famous people are like at all times, when in reality, any on-camera personality off-camera is probably a little more subdued, a little more chill, a little more serious. There was just a very minimal critique on Fame, and the only thing the character is concerned about is her credibility, and that's the only thing she gets critiqued for. It shows no complexities of Fame. Charlie gets famous from this incident. He's just chased down by the paparazzi all the time, but that part is made to just be comedic. I mean, it does wear on him sort of, but at the same time, he's just always kind of going along with it, despite him thinking it's weird. It just felt bland in that sense. Also, the dialogue between Charlie and Kat felt pretty basic. There was just nothing surprising about it, nothing new. It just feels like a fairy tale, not only of the romance, because the romance I expect to be a fairy tale. It's like a very just surface level look at Fame without any of the darkness. Like, she didn't even complain here and there about like having to do a brand deal or just like feeling tired. She did have to go on stage right after finding out about Bastien, which was kind of a vulnerable moment. One of the best moments I think the most iconic from the trailer too. They also just asked to suspend your disbelief a lot. Like, this scenario just would literally never happen. It's funny because Love is Blind season 2 just came out. I'm gonna do a video on that too. Stay tuned. But I feel like Marry Me's premise is kind of similar to Love is Blind, the show on Netflix. On Love is Blind, you're basically getting engaged to a stranger, and in Marry Me, she's just getting married to a stranger. It feels very similar, but in Marry Me, it's best case scenario. While in Love is Blind, once the couples meet each other, they're like at each other's throats because they are strangers and are not necessarily compatible in their regular lives. It's a lot of suspending the disbelief for me, and I think it's past my threshold. Little things like Kat starting to sing at the semi-formal. No singer would, on her day off, just go be performing for free. Like, please. Also, the part where Kat is trying to be independent, and every time she's trying to be independent, she literally just throws money at whatever problem she's facing, which is kind of like defeats the purpose of this independence you're trying to gain. The bitch throws a brick through her fancy vacation home window. Tell me we need to tax the rich without telling me we need to tax the rich. Like, no sane person would do that. We also really had to suspend our disbelief with all of JLo's songwriting scenes. Okay, that was shady, I know. I actually really like JLo. I like her better in acting and rom-coms. Like, I just think that's her strong suit, and she owns that. There was one part that was very intriguing where Kat says that her ex-husband sold a sex tape of her. I think this is supposed to be kind of a joke type line, but this sounded like they could have fleshed it out to be more of like a vulnerable moment with her. That's a really bad thing to happen to someone. That's very violating. She just says it very casually, like, oh, he released a sex tape of us. And I do think it's supposed to be kind of a joke for the audience to be like, like shock, laugh at it. But to me, that sounds super serious and dark. That could have been fleshed out as like a dark thing that happened to her with regards to fame. Every opportunity they had to make any commentary about fame, anything, the scrutiny, the exhaustion, they just stuck to the surface thing and moved on. I thought it was so funny how Kat's big journey and her growth in the movie was that, like, she couldn't use a blender before without her assistant's help. But then at the end, after Charlie helped her become more independent, she knows how to use a blender. I'll say I wasn't a big fan of the ending. I thought it was a little bit anticlimactic for a few reasons. First of all, at the 45-minute mark of the movie, I made a little prediction of what I thought was going to be the big climax moment, because it's the one thing that's not in the trailer. They had been hinting throughout the movie that the dog, Charlie's dog, Tang, I think was his name. There was one point where Charlie told Lou, the daughter, Tang is getting really old, like, and she's like, oh no, is he okay? And Charlie's like, he's fine, never mind. That's not what I was trying to say. There's one point where they're walking the dog and the dog just stops and sits and lays. And I was like, the dog is really important to Charlie. It's old. I thought the dog would at least be in, like, have a health scare more than dying, because, you know, this movie, I think definitely a death would be out of pocket for this movie. Like, it would never happen. But like a false alarm with the dog potentially, where it looks like he's bad and they go to the emergency room, and maybe Lou, the daughter, texts Kat because they're broken up at this time, and she's on Jimmy Fallon and runs to the dog and to Charlie while they're waiting for the dog's results. That shows that she cares about him, and that's the moment. And then the dog comes out and the dog's fine. It felt like they were teasing something about the dog was going to happen, but nothing happened. It was just a false trail, and the climax was the mathalon. I think the airport scene was shoehorned in. Like, it's kind of funny how, like, now airport scenes are just part of rom-coms and they'll find whatever way necessary to put it in. But I did think Kat arrived kind of too late at the very end. I thought she would play a part in helping the little girl answer the math question, because she was the one that taught her to dance. Imagine Kat runs in and there's still time on the timer, and Lou is trying to answer the question, and Kat looks at her and reminds her of the dance moves, and then the same thing happens. Whatever, she answers the question, but Kat ran in like right after the dancing, just came in to do the sign thing. The payoff wasn't there for like her going on this long journey. But yeah, it just felt like kind of an anticlimactic ending. Very predictable, and also she just wasn't a big part of the actual climax for the little girl. I was sad that Kat didn't find out about the mathalon from like the little girl or one of the kids or Sarah Silverman's character perhaps. Randomly, Jamila Jamil came in. I think she found out through Charlie's social media, but it just felt like this is such an unromantic way for Kat to find out that the mathalon was tomorrow. Jamila Jamil just came in to tell her the mathalon is tomorrow and flirt with Bastien a bit and remind her that Bastien is a douche. Oh my god, also the crowd scenes were so low energy. I don't blame crowds. I think most of the time they have to dance to silence. These crowds cracked me up. At the high school prom scene, all the kids are like swaying to her singing this song, and it's just the funniest thing. They also in the dance scene had a glee moment, and they sang Marry Me a cappella, some of the kids, the glee club. This just felt so random, like what is this glee moment thing a cappella? My theory is that they're just testing the waters for a glee reboot and just seeing how audiences respond to this scene. Not my favorite is my official response. I low-key think a glee reboot would slap though. Like, that's just my hunch. I think the product placement on this movie was very blatant. They bring Kat a bunch of handbags from Coach, and Charlie's like, is this a sponsorship? And she's like, no, Coach is donating all of these to this non-profit I work with. It's very like, okay, Coach is trying to do some image rehab for whatever reason. And then the most obvious product placement in the whole movie is I made him a website on Wix.com. The little kid makes a website for Charlie and on Wix.com. Now let's move on to the positives, the things I did like about this movie, because believe it or not, there are some. I think the best part, hands down, was the music. Honestly, Marry Me was more like a visual album with a side of rom-com. The music parts were like full songs, and they kind of felt like a live music video or something. Like, they made a pretty decent pop album for the soundtrack of this movie. The very last song on the soundtrack is On My Way, but it's a remix, the Telecast remix. Bitch, this song has been on my regular playlist. J-Lo put her entire J-Lucy into this soundtrack. And you can quote me on that. It's just so good. I love that song. There's some great songs in here too. The Marry Me song is good. Apparently Maluma and J-Lo filmed the Marry Me ballad scene at one of his actual concerts in Madison Square Garden. It reminds me kind of A Star Is Born. There was a lot of times in this movie where I noticed references to other things. I don't know if they're on purpose or not. I felt like kind of a few nods to maybe different pop stars. J-Lo's first performance that we see, her outfit feels very reminiscent of Beyonce. Even the song and the dancing. The dancers are in this nun, like slutty nun garb. Kind of reminds me of Lady Gaga's Alejandro, or probably something Madonna's done, I'm sure. I feel like the moment where Kat finds out that Bastien was cheating on her and immediately has to go on stage kind of reminds me of when Katy Perry got texted by Russell Brand that he wanted a divorce, and she was literally moments from going on stage, and she did, and she performed. One reference that I think is very deliberate, because this one actually has some fact behind it. There's one shot where Kat calls Charlie and from a car, and she's looking very glamorous, kind of dressed in this black look. The shot of her in the car on the phone is pretty much exactly the same as the final scene of Devil Wears Prada with Miranda Priestly in the car. It's funny because the cinematographer for Devil Wears Prada is the same cinematographer as this movie. I was just looking up the cinematographer to see who I could blame for the horrible lens distortion, and it is him, which I don't know who dropped the ball on the lens thing, but it's funny, he did the exact same shot of the phone in the car as Devil Wears Prada. It felt almost like a nod or just like a signature or something of his. Another thing I really liked about this movie was the fashion. Like, an honorable mention to all of J-Lo's little train conductor hats. But all of J-Lo's outfits, man, they were so good. The wedding gown was amazing, and honestly, the part where she's crying after the marriage in her house, watching Jimmy Fallon and other people tear her down, crying in the dress, that was so camp. Like, I love that whole like image. There was also this like white dress shirt pantsuit. I also loved her dress for the semi-formal where she went to chaperone. It was so pretty and girly and pink, although the dress wasn't appropriate for children. I don't think it was like, you know, showing a lot of J-Lo as she likes to do. So I think the glamour was a big A+ for this movie. Also, I think the acting was pretty good. I think they're all professionals. I think J-Lo gets criticized a lot for her acting, but I think her acting is her strong suit. She's charming in these rom-coms. I think the script was what was lacking for them, but the acting is great. I mean, Owen also is a big professional. Sarah Silverman, all I can hear with her voice is the Wreck-It Ralph character she plays, Penelope von Schweetz or whatever her name is. Michelle Buteau also played a role in this, and I'm so excited for her. She's one of my favorites. She's the host of The Circle on Netflix, and she has a lot of like little roles in lighthearted movies, and I'm always like, man, I just want her to have a bigger role. I think the role of Melissa in Marry Me was just that, and I hope it helps her sort of take the next step up in her career. It's wild because I watched a bunch of press interviews for Marry Me, and I watched one with Michelle Buteau and Sarah Silverman, and Michelle Buteau is on. Like, you can tell she has her career at stake anytime she has the spotlight. She is like giving a full-on comedy performance in this interview. And then Sarah Silverman is the complete opposite, and you can tell she has nothing to lose because I think she's stoned as hell for starters, like a little bit lost, a little bit of like, where am I energy. Anytime she does answer a question, she just bullshits it and doesn't really care. She doesn't understand the question a lot of the time. Do yourself a favor and go watch some of the press interviews for Marry Me, because if they're pure comedy, even though they're real, the questions these interviewers ask are so stupid, and the actors, you can tell, are like they know how stupid it is. I think J-Lo and Owen are just freaking professionals in these interviews. They know how to say what the interviewer wants to hear, like exactly, and in a smooth way that still feels natural. And then Maluma in these interviews is so funny. Like, I really was charmed by him most. He's so earnest and so excited. It's his first movie. As I've told y'all, hot people just laugh at anything. An interviewer will say like a very simple joke, and Maluma cracks up and is like, you're so funny, bro. Like, oh my god. Like, you can tell he genuinely thinks people are hilarious. Or something Owen will say, he's like cracking up, and it's just so funny. Maluma is just like, I think he's on a little bit of a himbo or something. Like, he's also very young. He is 27, which he's literally my age, which is wild to think about. And J-Lo is in her 50s, so get it, girl. I've been liking seeing press junket interviews, and just these actors are forced to talk in little sound bites and how their true feelings slip through the cracks sometimes. So I think I've rambled long enough about Marry Me. If you've watched the movie, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you're comforted by it, you are, and you like it, you like it. Like, it's just one of those movies that I had bigger expectations than what I got, and it just had too many issues. I still enjoyed myself, and I like picking apart these movies, so I love a bad movie coming out. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos twice a week about TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous on Instagram or Twitter to find out about new videos, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!